Hi, everybody. I am Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. I'm laughing because it has just been one of those mornings for me. And of course, as soon as I was ready to start the Zoom, my entire computer just froze and shut down and restarted. But now we're here. So I'm really, really happy that you're all out there. We have a fantastic webinar for you today with Aubrey Mackenzie Jones, Dr. Aubrey Mackenzie Jones. And she is going to help us understand, we know how tough it is. We're in the thick of it, but how to take care of yourself and how to live well, even though there is a serious diagnosis in your family. So I do have some housekeeping items before we really get started. Another glitch of technical difficulty I'm having today is that my presentation software isn't quite working. So it does look a little different today, but I've got all the slides for you. Later on, we will have some videos, and at that point, Miss Aubrey will share her screen and share those videos. So we've got that under control. We are in webinar mode, which means I can't hear you or see you participants out there. I know that you're there because I can see the count and I can see your names, but your cameras and your microphones are off. So if you have any questions or comments that you would like to let us know, you can put those into the chat box, and that would be great. I'll be able to let Aubrey know what questions are out there. And if we don't get to your questions, you can reach out to us outside of this webinar. That's no problem. So we should be here for about an hour today. This is being recorded, and everybody who registered will get the link of the recording and a copy of the slides in your email. So you'll have that later on, and you'll be able to rewatch if that is what you're looking for. So first and foremost, who are we? Who is Consolidated Planning Group? We go by CPG. Who is CPG, and why are we talking to you today? Well, we are first and foremost a financial planning firm. We do investments and securities, life insurance, estate planning, retirement planning, all of that stuff. We're based just outside of Houston in the Sugar Land area, and we serve families all across Texas and all across the United States. But the founder of our company, Allison, and her husband, Jeff, have two kids with disabilities. And when she was going through all of this, getting her kids signed up for the waiver programs and SSI and all the other benefits and planning for their future, she saw how difficult and cumbersome this is and how nuanced and how you have to really know everything about special needs planning to just be able to get through signing your kids up for this stuff. So she decided at that point that our firm is going to focus on helping families who have a loved one with any kind of intellectual or developmental disability. And so that's what we do. We love helping families, being an educational tool, a resource for you, being advocates for you. We've been in this investment and financial world for 30 years. We're members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we are also certified as National Social Security Advisors. So families come to us for things like lifetime protection plans. What if the main breadwinner in your household becomes disabled or passes away? We help you plan for those emergency situations. We always say that you should plan for the worst, but hope for the best and stay positive. And then when the best happens, you just have these plans in place just in case and you don't need them. That's great. We help families plan for a lifetime of care for your loved one. It's kind of like a third bucket of retirement money needed. You know, a husband and wife each have their retirement, or two partners, or mother and father, biological or adopted, whatever. The parents have their two retirement funds. But when you have a loved one who is maybe not going to be able to work for themselves or be completely independent, it's like a third bucket of retirement money that you need. We help with transition planning, ABLE accounts, understanding what you need to do and how things need to be set up. And like I said, we're here to advocate for you and to educate you. There are over 263,000 financial advisors across the United States. And out of those 263,000, fewer than a tenth of a percentage of those do financial planning specifically for special needs cases like we do. Individuals that have a loved one in their family with any kind of disability. It's fewer than 200 advising firms in the United States. So you are definitely in the right place, and we are definitely here to help you. We want you to think about, what we know you already think about what is going to happen and who will care for your child when you can't do it anymore. We know that keeps you awake at night. And what we want to say on that is that the time to start planning is right now. It doesn't matter what you have not done in the past. We're not going to punish you or make fun of you or, oh, I can't believe you haven't done X, Y, and Z yet. No, we focus on what you have in place and what you can do going forward to make things even better. If you have gaps in your planning, or maybe you missed something that you should be signed up for, we help look through everything to make sure you've got it all situated. We want you to think about what's going to happen beyond high school, because you don't want your child just to graduate from high school onto the couch to play video games. You want them to, live fulfilling lives, however that looks for them. Might that include a residential community, or maybe it includes secondary or post-secondary educational options? Maybe there's a vocational program that would work out for them, or day programs, ISS, things like that. Check into those things early and kind of get a feel for what you're looking for and what is right for your family, because some of those programs do have waiting lists, and we don't want you to have to go through the heartbreak of finding just the right thing and then realizing, oh, you can't even sign up this year because there's a waiting list. And then also make careful consideration before you just assume that a sibling is going to be able to step in and become a caregiver. In those instances, it's great when it works out, and it is very financially advantageous when it works out. But, sometimes maybe that caregiver sibling has their own family and their own career and life plan, and now they feel an obligation. Maybe the caregivee, the one who is being taken care of, might feel a little bit resentful that, sibling is now stepping into the role of parent and trying to be in charge and take control and tell me what to do. They might not like that either. So it can go either way. So just be careful with that situation, okay? Now, I am going to let Aubrey talk. She's got some great slides for us. Aubrey, thank you so much for being here with us today. Dr. Jones, please go ahead and take over. And barring any more technical glitches for today, we should be good to go.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the consolidated planning group, because I've known about you guys for some years, and you really helped me help other people too, because
fabulous.
You talk about some incredible topics, just as you mentioned, and those are really important things that a lot of times, we don't see and, know and what to do and how to do for ourselves. And so thank you guys for everything that you do. And thank you all for being here with us today. I really appreciate you coming in and listening to a little bit of what I have to say. I'm going to talk to you about similar things that Michelle just did, and how, her and CPG, they're advocates for families. They're there to support you guys in your decisions, because I myself was a mother of a child with incredible complex care needs. My son, which you will see him a little later on in this presentation. So this work is near and dear to me. It's definitely not just, a career goal or a little hobby that I do. It truly is my life and things that I have lived through. And I'm excited to share some of those lived experiences with you today as a parent champion with the Courageous Parents Network. If you don't know anything about CPN, when you hear me say CPN, that is the Courageous Parents Network. It's an organization that truly looks at helping to support and be there for those families of children that have those complex care needs. What does it look like, to think about that long-term care? What does, those difficult conversations look like that a lot of times we're scared to have? We don't know how to have those conversations, just as Michelle mentioned a moment ago. And sometimes those conversations get really heavy, right? And we don't know what questions to ask, who to turn to. I know for me, I did not. I had my son for 15 beautiful years. And in those first few years, I had no idea what to do. I did not know that a NICU existed. I did not know that kids that sick existed. But then there I had my little boy, my son, my precious D. And so I learned a lot. And I had to learn a lot very quickly. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit today about advocacy and what you can do for your child in these instances where you don't know what to do, because we only know what we know, right? So when we think about advocacy, I know that many of us are advocates for different things, but what is it in the healthcare system specifically? And when we look at that, it is how do we navigate those healthcare systems, right? How do we mobilize those resources? How do we address health inequities? How do we influence health policy? How can we create that change and sustainability for our youth and our loved ones in general who are going through that healthcare system, that advocating for them and making sure that they have everything that they need while going through that healthcare process, because it is a process. It is an incredible journey. I know that it changed my life tremendously, and advocacy does look different in that healthcare space because there's a lot of policies, a lot of politics, a lot of protocol, and a lot of people to go through to get what your child needs and deserves. And as we do that for those children, as we do that for our loved ones, that increases their physical and emotional well-being. Truly it does. And it also helps us learn the rights and responsibilities for ourselves as caregivers and for those that depend on us for their care, because they may not know, right? And when we have those kiddos who sometimes have those high-level needs, they may understand even more. And when they see us advocating for them, guess what? That teaches them how to advocate for themselves. So they become these strong, independent folks who can have a little bit more of that independence and really work to take care of themselves as they grow older. Because as Michelle just mentioned, we get older too, right? Sometimes we have to think about, what are they going to do without me? And so when we put ourselves in the advocacy space, we teach our children how to advocate for themselves as well. So on that Courageous Parents Network site, just a little bit more about it, as I talked about a moment ago, it truly is a space of support. And one thing that, again, for me, that I want to highlight today is going to be that advocacy piece, but there's so much more in there. And I know for me, which I'm going to share with you guys today, it's going to be the voices of people that are just like you, the voices of parents and caregivers that have gone through these struggles, had these different experiences, these lived experiences with their child who has complex care needs, and in many various ways that they talk about their stories and how it has impacted their lives and how they have learned to advocate for their child. I say knowing your child's medical condition unapologetically because you have to. That's one piece of advocacy, right? Because we know our kids. We know who our kids are. We know who our loved ones are. So we have to know their medical conditions unapologetically. What does that diagnosis look like? How do we build off of their strengths? How do we adjust to those changes? How do we navigate those changes and sometimes the decline? Because I know for me, that was all a process for my son. I had to understand his diagnosis, and a lot of times I had to learn on my own, right? Because there are many instances where the doctors won't tell you a lot. Sometimes they can't tell you a lot because they have to protect themselves too. And as a care provider, that can be worrisome. It can leave you in a space of feeling alone in that journey and in that process. But through that space of, again, learning how to advocate for our children, we begin to know their medical conditions unapologetically. I know my child. I know what they're going through, and being able to speak up in that space for them. And here we're going to listen to just a short clip from a mom who had very high alert vigilance for her son, and she was very unapologetic about his care. So with that, I'm going to let you hear from Miss Naomi about her son, Noah. And let me know if you can hear it. Hopefully you can.
Because Noah is 14, some of his physicians, they're not, some are at retirement point, but they haven't retired yet. When we have emergencies, we used to know the teams in the emergency department, in the PICU. They knew me, they knew Noah, and they knew Noah is a train wreck on paper. We don't discount that. Noah and I have this, baby, you have these diagnoses, right? These are all the things, and you are not that paper. So yes, you have these things. Yes, they create limitations and disabilities, and you are more than that. And it shows up now where all people see is when they get his chart, they expect a vegetative person. And no, that's not who he is. Listen to me. Let me show you. I have videos and I have pictures. Okay, we went in once. It was about 10 o'clock, and by the time we got to the floor and the doctor comes in, he said, okay, so this is his baseline. And he was asleep. I said, no, it's 10 o'clock. It's bedtime. It's called sleep. Oh, that's not his baseline. He was super sick. And I said, this is not my child. Something is really, really wrong. He doesn't just sleep. That's not him. And thankfully, one of his physicians, one of the specialists that knew him, came in to see him. He's like, yeah, no, this isn't Noah. This isn't the Noah that I know. It shows up now with new physicians who don't trust that I know what I'm talking about, who rely solely on what they learned in a book and or potentially from what they've seen from other families. We recently just had a major medical error with a new physician who changed a medication without telling me and enabled him to get generic, and it was more so to get a capsule. Noah is solely G-tube fed. And so everything has to be able to go through the G-tube without clogging it. They changed the prescription and said it's okay for him to get this. Not only was it almost life-threatening for him in the sense of clogging the tube, I fought years with insurance to get this medication covered because it's considered it is an over-the-counter medication, but he can't take it by mouth. And so fighting with insurance, finally getting it cleared for this person in a matter of 5 minutes to potentially upend all of that. So it is a continual, I have to be on my P's and Q's.
So hearing that story, again, that mother and her vigilance and what she had to do to advocate for her, her son. I could just imagine, I know I've been there, and I'm sure that plenty of you guys on the call today have been there and know that diligence in making sure that you stand up for your child because you do know them, and it's okay to use your voice in that space to say, this is not my child. This is not their baseline. This is not what they normally do. and not be fearful of doing that, because I know sometimes that's also a scary space. Because I remember being a mom who would be fearful of that medical jargon in the very beginning, because it's a lot of, again, medical terminology coming at you. And you feel a lot of times that sometimes doctors know best because they're the doctors, they've gone through the programs, they know what they're talking about, but you are also the expert of your child. You know that child. And so again, unapologetically knowing your child and standing up for them in all of those spaces, because I put this in slide in here too, thinking about that, the process of the day, and how do you tell the doctors what's going on, and then how do you understand for yourself? Because again, for me, my son had a lot of neurological things going on. His primary diagnosis was hydrocephalus, but it's led to a myriad of other diagnoses. And so we went through these phases, as you see on this chart, adapting and how that affects every other aspect of his life, and being able to verbalize that and know that, and having a space to go to that, shows that and tells us that and gives us a better understanding of it, so that we can talk to our clinicians about that. Because again, sometimes you may get labeled or polarized with just this is what is the norm, this is what is expected, but the norm of your child. And then this space here on the website, because I know specifically whenever I kept thinking about, and it sounds kind of crazy, but I know that there are some complex care parents on this call that have had these thoughts before too. Like, what does that look like longevity wise? What does that end of life look like? How does this look? How do I work my way through this? And at that time, I had nowhere to go. Even as I found CPG, which was about 5 or 6 years ago, I was elated because there was an agency and organization talking about conversations that are hard conversations, but conversations that parents around the world need to have. We need that support. And there are layers of support that come with this process of raising our kiddos that have these complex care needs. And it was just a breath of fresh air to start slowly getting these, answers, and having these groups of folks that you can reach out to. So again, that's why I will always say thank you to agencies such as CPG and CPN, because the complex care needs parents, we're out here and we're raising our kids and we're doing our best. And sometimes that's with little support. So when we can grab a hold of that support, we need it. We want it. It's really, a lot of times it's a lifeline. And that's why I put this search engine part in here, because when you go in, it's not just about, one thing, right? There's many things that we can look for, whether again, it's anticipatory grief, because some of us have children that are at different stages and levels of sickness. And for some, like my son, it was terminal. I was, grateful to have him for 15 incredibly beautiful years. But there's also the processes of things that come with that. And what does it look like? What is shared decision making? There is a such thing as shared decision making. I actually have a voice in the process with my child. I'm on a team. I'm a part of a team. So realizing that, yes, those are possible things. And yes, you are a part of that team. As a matter of fact, you're the co-captain, and your kiddo, your loved one, they're the captain, right? Because it's their life, and we're the ones here doing our best to give them the best quality of life that we possibly can.
We
And
do have,
so, oh yes, yes.
we have a question in the chat, and this whole website looks like the answer to the question, but
Okay.
and maybe you're going to come to this.
Mhm.
Advice for parents where there's no the medical community hasn't agreed upon a name for this condition. It's not even like they don't know what the treatment standard protocol is for this condition. It doesn't have a name. It's just, what can parents do?
There actually is a space on the website for that. If I was in the interactive mode, I could show it, but I definitely don't mind putting some additional info in the chat once we get out of my screen, because you can go in there for that. And that is, I forget what they call it, but just kind of that mysterious diagnosis phase and how troubling that is to parents. And you will actually, if you go on to listen to some of these parents' testimonies, there's so many other parents that have gone through that I've seen their videos in here. And they talk about that struggle of what it looked like to have a child that was sick, sometimes deathly ill, but nobody knew what was going on. And sometimes parents found out later, and sometimes they found out, Never, which is sad, but it's the truth. But there are some of those videos in there that I will definitely plug in later for you, Michelle, so that could
Okay.
better answer that person's question. But to just add to that a little bit more, you're not alone. Whoever that person was in the chat that asked that question, you are so not alone in that particular fight, because there are other parents out there that have gone through it and are still going through it and can help you walk through it as well. So yes, I will keep a mental note of that.
Fantastic. And then we also just have a comment that, there might be doctors that don't see your children as in their best interests. And, you should never accept that. And just like you said, you're forming a team, and you should not allow any members on the team who don't have your child's best interest at heart. They can go, you can find another doctor, you can find other support. You don't need them.
Yes, 100% agree. And I will stand up on that every time, because it's, interestingly enough, a lot of parents don't realize that they have that right either. They feel
Yes.
like this is our position, so this is just what we have to deal with, and this is what it is. And I tell parents all the time, that's absolutely not the truth. You have the right to say, respectfully, I think I want another opinion. I think we want to get another physician because something doesn't feel right here. And as care providers, we know when something doesn't feel right. And when you feel those, I call them spidey senses are tingling. If the spidey senses are tingling, pay attention. Pay attention to how your child even acts when you take them to that position. How, does their demeanor change? Because even if they're nonverbal, my son couldn't talk. He was completely dependent, but he could feel people. I could sense the difference in his nature. So all of those things are incredibly important. And you absolutely can say, you're fired.
Yeah.
Respectfully, and find somebody else that you can relate better to, that takes the time and patience to learn you and your child. And this kind of goes back into the question about what the one of the participants just asked. Once you do go in that search engine, whatever you're searching for, it'll pop up many different videos. And here I just typed, my thing was advocacy. I wanted to show you a clip of that, and you'll see what does that look like when we think about it in the family aspect, because sometimes there's sisters and other brothers, and then you have the parents, whether it's a single parent household or a two-parent household. That advocacy can look different across the board, because if there's just the child that has the disability to think about, or are there multiple children? Is it a blended family, a blended home? What does that look like? So all of those things, we look at, because they're going to play a role in how we move forward with our child and the decisions that we make for them. And in this one, I love this video because it talked about quality of life. And that's a huge thing for me. And it was just beautiful the way that it was put. And it's something that I still think of today, and I also give to other parents. So we're going to hear from Miss Jennifer about her son and how they made decisions for his care and how they advocated for him.
We had a shared philosophy, which I think made a lot of decisions much easier, in that we always looked at any kind of intervention with Ben with one basic question: is this going to benefit his quality of life or our family's quality of life? And we framed every decision around that. So it wasn't, should he have this surgery? Should he have this intervention? Should he have this test? We were always asking doctors, well, what are the tests going to tell you? Here's one answer, here's the other answer. Well, what are you going to do about it? And if there was nothing that was going to be done, regardless of what the answer would be, we would say, well, then we don't need to test.
For example, we, eventually stopped giving Ben swallow studies because we knew his swallowing was going away. The study was only telling us that. It was only giving, quite frankly, school systems ammunition to why he couldn't do something instead of us, which is he can still do something. And so we stopped having them. There wasn't a purpose that was making his life better, unless we wanted to choose a feeding tube. And that's a different conversation than just a swallow study. I mean, we knew he was aspirating. We knew we needed to puree everything. We knew we needed to modify how we were feeding him. We didn't need a test, or him to have to go, more importantly, him to have to go through that.
I really like that. That's
Yes, powerful.
powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that again, when the doctors say, well, we need to do another sleep study, we need to do another this, we need to do another that. It's easy for parents, especially when we don't know, because again, we only know what we know. So if the doctor, this medical physician is saying, we need to do this, most parents, they're thinking, well, we've got to go back to the hospital, we've got to do another surgery. But do you? Do you actually have to do that? And allowing yourself that authority to say, well, wait a minute, let me think about it. And sometimes we do get physicians that will, do that for us with you. They will actually be a part of that team and say, hey, you don't have to. This is something that you can think about. And I love it when those clinicians really put the power back into the family's hands instead of kind of making it a space where this is something that you should do, right? Because most folks look at our clinicians and our care providers in that authoritative figure, right? Because we're trusting them to care for us. But just as Jennifer just said about her son Ben and how she and her husband looked at that, quality of life piece. Is this really going to help him? Or is it going to hurt him more? What is this going to do for his quality of life and for our family? And that's a total different mental health piece that, could take a whole other turn in conversation. But that's a huge part of advocacy because you're standing up for your child and you're standing up for your family, which is amazing. And in this video, I love the quote from this mother. She said, someday you will tell the story of how you got through your struggle and it will become the survival guide for others. And I absolutely love that because is that not what advocacy is? As I mentioned earlier, I sit in this space because of my lived experience with my son. I've always advocated and stood up for people that were in some way disadvantaged, but this was totally different because I was able to walk through that life and struggle through it in many aspects and now advocate for other people and families through those lived experiences. And this again is just clips to show the different topics on what that looks like and the knowledge behind those topics. Because I said earlier, one of the biggest things of advocacy for me is really being as knowledgeable as possible in that space. And for everybody, it looks different because one parent may need to know more about tracheostomy. One parent may need to know more about clinical trials, just like the participant in the chat a moment ago. Her and her family, or that parent and their family, may be in a space where doctors are saying, let's try this, let's try that, let's do this, let's do that. So there's a whole clinical trial piece on the website that goes through that for those parents that are in those unknown spaces where their child could end up being one of those patients where they say they would be a great person for this. There's a lot of information on there for you to sift through to, again, make that best decision for your child and truly stand up in that advocating space for them and yourself. And in this video, this family was so sweet to me because going through processes of complex care, there are those times where we realize, well, maybe I can't do exactly what I want to do, but what I can do is make their life better. So we're going to hear from this family and how they chose to advocate for their child to just make sure that their son had a better life, a good life.
Asked to how long he has, absolutely no idea. He said, well, don't kids, it's about a 5-10 years max. He goes, yeah, but he also has something really important that nobody else has. And I'm like, why? He goes, well, who put him on a wheelchair? And I'm like, I did. Why did you do that? Because he has this thing called cataplexy and he walks around and falls. I didn't want him to crack his head. He goes, he should have already been gone. He goes, but you are 2 steps ahead anticipating what he needs. So however long he lasts you is however long you are anticipating his needs. And he goes, and it's going to be kind of cruel because you're a really good advocate. So you get to see him sort of wasting away and shutting down. The NMT1 is essentially shutting down sort of his whole systems, and it's concentrating towards the center in his core. So that's why he's sort of like still around. But it's sort of like is what it is, and he's losing all these things right in front of us.
That doctor said something really powerful, which is that because you are so good at anticipating Frank's needs, he will live longer,
Mhm.
which gives you time to see more losses.
Yes.
How, what, talk about that, like the better you are, like,
Yeah, so it kind of feels like a weight on your shoulders, because it felt at the time. Because I even said to him, like, well, is there not somebody else I can talk to? He goes, unfortunately not. Your son is an N1 rare unique. I'm like, what does that mean? He goes, he's patient one in a really rare and unique disease. There's no writer. He is the writer. He is the research. And I kept thinking, and I'm like, that can't be right. So there's like sites like yourself. I went on Facebook. I put myself in the rare gene, like rare illness sites, looking for someone, and I discovered that no, I'm unique in it. It felt like I was stressful, but then I thought to myself, you know what? I can't control what I cannot control. And this is where I became a little critical, according to my husband, because then what I decided what I can control is the experiences that my son is going to have from here till then. So I turned my life into like a bucket list checking based on my knowledge of Frankie. Well, we're not finding a cure because there is no cure. So we're putting like comfort and quality of life is the new road that you're on. And I feel like they moved us into PACT. They started putting things for the home. There were a lot of things that we didn't know about that I stumbled upon because he was on wheelchair, that someone tells me, well, when your son is incapacitated, what's the first step? The first step is go find yourself a DPH, social worker. No one tells you about that. They're the licensing agency. Once I had that social worker, she told me everything that I needed. So it became a way of getting a team behind us to support us on our journey. So we may be rare and unique and on our own path, but there's a lot of people that sort of support us and are there to sort of like act as sounding board or give us information and help us. And yeah, I can't save my son, but I can make his life better and improve it as I'm going. And he had asked me one time, why do you do this? And I get emotional about it. And I said, he goes, he doesn't know what we're doing. Like, he might not know, but if he goes, I said that I know that he had a full life and he really has had a better life than I would say a lot more people. Dr. Casey had put him in like Make-A-Wish, so he got his wish granted. Most kids don't get to meet one celebrity that they want. He got to meet the celebrity he wants and a whole entire team, because it was the whole entire WWE, right? That was there at the 25th anniversary. So he got to do that. He got to travel whenever we could. Dr. Casey would approve it. We connected with someone to take us with oxygen. We traveled with a ton of equipment. I learned really well how to call ahead of time the airlines, the TSA, like what to do to get us into be able to. We were going to go to Aruba with them. I found out that when you travel places, you can call places and they'll outfit your room exactly like I have it here, like a mini ICU. So we learn a lot of things along the way that people help us to sort of get through that. And then we check off the things that he has done.
All right, that's not fair for you to be making us cry today.
You know, but it's just that real life space. And
Yeah.
she just took the journey and she took her son's life into her own hands, and she didn't care what anybody said. She was going to make him the most beautiful life that she possibly can. And she did, until his last days. And we saw him meeting the sports team and going to Disney World, and she took him out of the country. So parents don't even think about that sometimes, because it's like, my child is sick and we can't. And she was like, well, no, we actually can. And even when her own husband said, well, he's not going to remember, she said, so even if he still had this incredible life. And she also in that space mentioned, because I'm such a good advocate for my son, she created an incredible space for him. And thankfully she had a great team, which, I know some people struggle with not having the best team. And we didn't have that for many years. So everybody's experience is so different, which is why it's important that we do bring in all of these services and resources through our agencies, so that parents know you have the support and you are not alone. Because sometimes it is a very isolating and alone space, because having child with complex care needs and disabilities is a totally different world that you don't, really get it until you just dive in head first, and that's it. Life has changed. And that's what we see in this blog as well. We have a mom, Miss Amanda, talking about her lovely daughter. And one of the biggest things that, was the barrier and challenge for her with Adeline was the fact of advocacy, because it did not stop. It never stops advocating. You can't. And then our children, they change. Sometimes they regress, sometimes they evolve. And what does that look like for them? How do we constantly, consistently advocate for our children? And she wrote such a beautiful blog about that. And many other blogs are out there, parents, sharing their experiences. One of my own is out there that I just published a couple of weeks ago on the website. And it was about just my days. I just wanted to release what it felt like to have my son with me, and also to transition as he transitioned out, and what that looks like for me today and how that feels. So just those different processes of getting through those phases as we evolve through these layers and levels. And here I talk a little bit about just the layers of advocacy, because it looks so different. And one of the things that I think about first is listening. And it's not just listening to the clinicians or others, it's also listening to ourselves. What are we hearing from ourselves? What are we hearing from our loved one? I know when I think about my son and the way that I listen to him, it was watching him, observing him. What's going on? What's happening? What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I feeling? And then learning through that process of the listening and the observing, allowing ourselves the authority to learn and to grow, because we may not have medical degrees. We may not have these different things where other people have that are telling us what to do, but we learn just the same. And as I said earlier, these are our kiddos. These are our loved ones. We know them. We see them all the time, and we love them. And being able to trust in that space of knowing that, hey, I've learned about my kid. I've learned about my loved one because I have listened to them. I have listened to myself. I have been observing. I've been learning the language. And then being okay to unapologetically speak up. You can speak up. We have to speak up, sometimes even when it hurts. And in this video, you're going to hear Mira talk about her journey with her daughter a little bit. And I'll relate to it as well, because that speaking up part, sometimes advocacy is not what we want to say, but it is what is best. And we're going to hear a little bit about that with her story.
There is a moment in which the previous world, the one where you can control things, the one where you operate not in a world of anachronistic loss or trauma, is one where you do whatever it takes because you think that you can control the result. And that's the approach that we took with Javi, because she was our daughter. And those months where she was doing double sessions of physical therapy and occupational therapy and struggling through basic exercises and not making progress, I remember we would call each other on the car rides from an appointment to work and check in. And those conversations were heart-wrenching. She had made a quarter of an inch of progress, it seemed, on a pull-up. And then once the fatal diagnosis settled in, there was a relief in the approach that we took. We could just be with our daughter and play with her and not turn the living room into an exercise room, or study her every move as it related to whether she was using her left or her right hand when she was eating. And there was power in that for us. I mean, if we could get any time back, our only regret would be, half of her life, the first year, where we couldn't just operate in that play and love space because we were so consumed by control and progress. Yeah. And we were programmed that way. The two of us as sort of type A athletes too, like particularly as it relates to what you can do physically, if you just keep at it. So
Yeah,
I mean, even the term early intervention, you know, it's early and intervene. Like it was this thing of like driving toward the next set of milestones and seeing all the right specialists and getting all the right physical supports or equipment or clothing or whatever it was. And it was torture for her, you know, it was torture. Like the fact we put her through that, like I don't regret much, obviously, you know. Um, but that just feels like it was so cruel. The one that really gets me is the occupational therapist suggested these braces for her legs to like help her stand. And we had her fitted for them and then drove out to some like office somewhere to have them like once they were done to have them show us how to put them on. And like she hated it. It was so uncomfortable and awkward, and it just and we used them once for half a day, and then she was diagnosed with Tay-Sachs, and they sat in the corner of the room, you know, and every time I saw them I wanted to like, you know, just blow them into a million pieces.
Well, I've definitely been there myself. And as you can see in that little picture, that's my little guy about 14 years ago, which is unbelievable. But he's the reason why I talk about advocacy. He is for sure my why. And just listening to the story of Javi and her parents, as I said a moment ago, sometimes advocacy is the things that we don't want to say sometimes. And I remember the last probably couple of years of my son's life when I just realized, you know what? He hates therapy. He hates outpatient, and it wasn't working. It was actually making him worse. And it was not giving him any progression at all. And so I made that decision. Really, he made that decision. And I just had to agree because I felt enough that I knew my son enough. And that's another part, again, of us as care providers advocating for our children and our families is to know them and to accept when they say, I've had enough, I'm done. And I accepted that. And I wanted him to just be happy with his little, he had chew toys, like he's loved to chew on his little toys. And I just wanted him to have his little chew toy and be the happiest little person that he could ever be. And that was my focus. And that made me feel better because I pulled back from what I wanted because I wanted, you know, to see my child be healthy, but there was also a delusion within that space. And that's that other extra layer of gaining that additional advocacy for our kids because it's like, okay, this is a dream. This is not reality. And it's great to dream. We love our kids. We want the best for our kids. No one, you know, has a child and says, my child is going to be sick and I'm going to go through this incredible world and it's going to be a whirlwind. No parent ever says that. We say, oh my God, 10 fingers, 10 toes. They're going to be great. They're going to be these amazing people running around tearing my house apart. And then we realize for some of us that that's not the case. And that's okay too, because we are fortunate to have these beautiful, beautiful beings, these beautiful, wonderful children that change us and alter us in the best way possible and create the champions that we are as care providers for them in their care. And so that's my why, which is this little amazing, gorgeous guy here. And a little bit more, because I can't see questions, but I hope this may answer some that are in the chat, especially if we're getting close to time.
They're all just saying how much they appreciate you and sharing your story and are loving this webinar. There's no questions. Keep going.
Okay, awesome. Well, if there's a space that some of you guys think, you know, where do I go with all this information? How do I digest all of this? Again, with this website, with CPN, it is truly about just that complex care piece. And not only that, it really is about palliative care also. And I began to learn more about palliative care over the last 5 years or so, which was so crazy because Nobody ever mentioned palliative care to me. Nobody. We got mentioned, hospice and that, but palliative care and hospice are two totally different things. And I am a true proponent for palliative care because it is amazing. And it doesn't matter what level of care your child is on, it is an incredible resource with a team that can come in and support you and really help sift through some of these layers of the journey that you go through raising these kids, because we don't know. And again, we only know what we do know. And so they're just another layer of support. So within that, you see that here, we talk about anticipatory grief, we talk about the baselines, and again, palliative care, and that shared decision-making and that advanced care planning on the medical side. What does that look like and how we can really get through that process? And the pathways that we operate under, these are just some of them, but it's again, basically that expectation of life. And then as one of the parents mentioned in the chat earlier, what's out there for me? Is there any information about that? To me, the piece de resistance, if you will, are those stories from the families, really getting to see and hear from them. To me, it's so impactful, right? Because to be able to hear a story from others that have gone through it is an amazing thing, because you can go in a room and just breathe. You feel like sometimes a weight is taken off of your chest and you take the biggest breath because, oh my God, somebody knows what I've gone through. Oh my God, they've been there. And it all looks so different because all of our kids have all different kinds of needs. So to see that again in somebody else, it can help. And if you're one of those care providers and you're like the one that's up at night thinking, sometimes those videos are comforting to some folks up at night that are thinking, oh my God, what do I do? What's the next step? And it helps you to process those thoughts because again, you're not alone, even when you feel like you are, but you're not. And the clinician portal, I really love this because as I mentioned earlier, and I love our clinicians, my son had about 18 specialists, I believe, and some of them were amazing, amazing. But with this clinician portal, it gives you the opportunity to share with doctors about how to better understand you and what you're going through, because a lot of times they're trained physicians. They're not trained social workers. They're not trained psychologists. They're not trained mental health providers. So there's a space sometimes where there can be a lapse and a gap within that support there sometimes. It's great when you have those palliative care minded physicians that can sit with you and really hold on to that bedside manner that we all look for and that we all want and that we all really need, but that's not always the case. And so being able to share this with them or their offices, it can help open them up to a space of, oh, okay, I definitely don't know this part. This is not my part, but here's something else that's something that can help you. This is something that, can help you better understand where you're going through, because we know that a lot of times, again, they don't have time and sometimes that's not their expertise. Sometimes they're an incredible neurosurgeon, but they are not an incredible therapist. So this just helps with that understanding so that they know. And it also gives us that grace too within ourselves to see them as physicians, but see them also as humans, and also have the same thing from them to see us as not just another patient, but a family that is really going through this process and this incredible journey that is completely life-changing. And I feel like this really helps to get to that space of it because I know I lived in the hospital. And for those that are on the app, if you do just find yourself on your phone, you can definitely go to the app and download it if you want to. Again, we look at that space of looking at the care of your child, that physical, daily medical care side and what that looks like, and helping you navigate through the process, because some days are good, some days are not that good. And sometimes you need something to lean on, something to read or listen to support you in that space that you're in at that current moment. And you can find that there. And for me, this is my information. You guys are more than welcome to contact me. If you have questions, you can scan the QR code. It will take you to the website and peruse around, search the site. And I hope that it gives you some comfort wherever you are in your journey with your child, whether you are still in the process or like me, if you are a bereaved mother. But there's a lot of information out there for you. And yeah, we support you in any way that we can. And with that, Michelle, I will give it back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Aubrey. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again real quick and just give you all the last few slides that I have about Consolidated Planning Group. But feel free to snap that QR code real quick before I go over. You will receive the slides in your email later today, so don't panic if you missed that. There you go. One more second on that. Like I said, you'll get this later on today, but you can certainly reach out to Aubrey with more questions and areas where you might be able to find the advice that you're looking for. If we have a couple of minutes left over when I'm done, we'll get that. So yeah, you'll receive the link and the slides later on today in your email to watch this webinar over again. These are some of the other webinars and the other things that we help our clients with that you might want to keep on your radar. Things like how to set up beneficiaries, how to take care of that special needs trust, the ABLE account, the state and federal benefits, things like that. We also talk a lot about residential communities, after high school, what happens, legal aspects like guardianship and divorce and how that affects everything. So feel free to check on our upcoming webinars. When you get this later on, you can click right here and that will take you to our upcoming webinars. You can register for those and then same thing, you'll get the invite and you'll also receive the link to the recording and the slides after the webinar is over if you can't attend it in person. This is our team. Again, we're based in Sugar Land, which is just outside of Houston, but we serve families all across Texas and all across the United States. So if you have anybody in your life who might be able to be served by us, we welcome them. We welcome free consultations. We love for people to share our information and let other people, engage with us. So you can use the QR code to schedule your free consultation, or you can just call or email us and we'll get that set up for you. We're actually probably going to reach out to you to see if you want your consultation. Please don't get angry with us. It's our job. But this is generally a 30 to 45-minute conversation over a Zoom call. You have the opportunity to pick our brains and ask us anything that you want to ask. And then we'll talk to you about our services and what we offer and what we cost if you choose to go through the planning process with us. And we're very friendly, I promise. There's no biting, no criticism, just all friendly faces. So go ahead and schedule your free consultation. Yes, there's a link to re-listen. And if you wouldn't mind, Aubrey, there's one last question. Do you have any ideas on where people can search for programs and residential options that would serve a medically dependent child or adult children once the parents are gone?
Well, I hope that the parents are still around prior to, because I know that preventative care prevention, as you talked about earlier too, is a big thing for all of us. The first one that comes to my mind though is Savita. I don't know if people in the room have heard of them before, but they do help provide some of that care. The earlier, the better. That way you can just have that case management piece there to make sure that those different placements are in place. Let me see if I can find the link really quick and I'll put it in the chat for everyone. But they're a pretty good resource to use for that.
Okay.
Let me see.
And then, yeah, we do webinars that, like I said, we have panel webinars where we have various community representatives come in and talk about what they offer. And it's going to be hard because not everybody has the support that your child might need. But, by calling around and helping you look around, we can certainly provide you with lists of residential options and help you find places to call around to, and then support you through our webinars. There's the link in the chat for Savita. So, okay, that is all the time we have today. Thank you all for sticking with us for these last few moments. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and that you were able to get some comfort and learn from this webinar. Again, you'll get these slides and the link later on in your email. And I hope that, you just feel free to reach out to us or to Aubrey. We are truly here to help and to lend our support to you. Everybody have a great day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Aubrey. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.